Bonjour. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, for attending this hybrid event on cyber attacks and risk for organization and international relations, organized by the French Chamber of Commerce in Singapore with ESSEC Business School Asia. This is really great to see so many faces today in this amphitheater, and so thank you for being with us, and thank you as well for our online participants. Thanks to ESSEC Business School for their sponsor and support, and the warm welcome this morning on the campus, and for the nice breakfast. My name is Lydia Fulton. I'm in charge of the Events Committee and Communication at the French Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. And this is really my great pleasure today to welcome Professor Sedomir, International Marketing and Geopolitics and Director of the ESSEC Mannheim Executive MBA Asia Pacific, to moderate the conversation today, along with two key experts on the topic. So welcome with me Frédéric Gillan, co-founder and Chief Revenue Officer at X-Rater, and Mr. Fabien Goutely, Head of Asia, PNC and Specialty Lines at Diot Siachi Group. Please don't hesitate to ask your question during the Q&A session. We will take as well some questions from the online participants. And now, without further ado, Professor Sedomir, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, and we are very happy to see you in presence. It is the first time that we organize something here at the ESSEC Business School. So I hope that we will have plenty of questions concerning this very interesting topic, because we have two terms in this in the announcement. The first one is cybersecurity. So this is inducing a lot of questions and sometimes misunderstandings. So this is why we have the experts who are going to answer these questions. And the second one is international relations, because obviously when we talk about cybersecurity, there are no borders. So automatically the people who are attacking, but also the people who are defending, they don't look at the boundaries in order to protect themselves. So we'll have the two speakers, and the first thing that is that we have to look at the two terms. So concerning cyber and security, I think that they will also have the opportunity to explain what do they mean by cybersecurity, and especially what do we mean by risk, because this is at the heart of the cybersecurity. And the second thing is international relations. And international relations, this is not only between states. It is also between companies, but it is also between people, because we are all on different social media, and their social media are hosted in different countries. So they will also have their own policies, how they are looking at the cybersecurity. What do we mean, for instance, by privacy? What do we mean by protection? Who has to protect? Is it up to the state? Is it up to the company? Is it up to the individual? So I think that we have on the plate so many questions. So I will first ask the two panelists to introduce themselves briefly, and after that I will ask them a few questions. After that, we will also have time in order to exchange, because here in the classroom we also have people with experience. So I suppose that you will have plenty of questions or comments to add to what they are saying. So I will start with Fabien Goutely first. Can you introduce yourself?
Can you hear me correctly? So yeah, no, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for everybody to attend this morning. My name is Fabien. So I'm working for the insurance brokerage company. The name is Diot Siachi. So we have a branch offices here. So it's a French company, French multinational company. So we are specialized in different type of risk management issues and provide some insurance solution. Personally, my background and my level of expertise is dedicated in financial risk, and with a strong expertise in cybersecurity and cyber insurance, because so we're talking about so cyber insurance basically.
Thank you very much, because every time that we talk about risk, we have to talk about insurance. How do we cover the risk? No, all the time. We have another participant, Frédéric Gillan. He's coming from the other side, that is from the technical, but also from the strategy side concerning concerning cybersecurity. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Professor. So my name is Frederick. I'm also an ESSEC alumni from the previous century. I've had a corporate career that now spans over 3 decades. And recently I co-founded a cybersecurity software company called X-Rater. I'm also a lecturer at ESSEC, not at all in cybersecurity, in cross-cultural communication. And we can see that the two are linked. I'm on the technology side of cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is, 80% of attacks, they are done by social engineering. So it's about people first, and technology is just the plumbing.
Thank you very much. We'll go back to this very interesting statement about people and about the social and the cultural side of it. Before that, I would just like to take 1 or 2 minutes in order to explain what does it mean, cybersecurity, meaning what kind of risk do we face, and is it possible to defend against this kind of risk? Because when we are reading the newspapers or when we are, for instance, watching TV, we have plenty of movies, we have plenty of series about hackers, about people who are going to take money, who are taking persona from the people and so on. And I think that recently, especially concerning the war that we have in Ukraine, we also have cybersecurity operations there. I saw that the webpage of Moscow has been paved with anti-Putin presence. So it means that we are always there. Would it be for the military side? Would it be for the professional side? So my first question is for Frédéric about the types of attacks that we can have, and especially if we are making any difference between, let's say, business protection and military protection, or do you think that it is exactly the same thing?
It's different because there are different types of attackers. We can loosely define them in 3 types. You've got what is called a script kiddie. So this is a 15-year-old in his room, living at his parents', and who is there for, everything is driven by motivation. So who is driven by fame or revenge? Typically, not necessarily. This is what they are showing always in the movies. My partners in the company, I've never seen them with hoodies. It's far too hot in Singapore. One is in Singapore, one is in... Actually, the one who is in France, he's got a hoodie very often. They always did it in a legit way. A white hat and never black hat. And then you have people who are motivated by greed. So these are the mafia, typically. And these are people who are going to launch some phishing campaigns and trying to get your credentials and get into your company or your bank account. And then you have those who are military grade or linked to governments, and they're sometimes called APT, or Advanced Persistent Threat. And these ones have some aims which have been there for 5,000 years, because cyber warfare is going under the same principle than warfare. It is first to get some information, so to spy, then to exercise force to destroy the enemy, and then also to use subversion and manipulation to wreak havoc at the enemy, or to make the enemy move into a certain direction. So yeah, there are some differences, and we can elaborate on all these things.
And just one last thing, since you have mentioned the 3 options, you didn't mention the option when a business is attacking another business. Does it exist?
It is. I could take the parallel. Of course, yes, it does exist. It exists all the time, and usually this is linked with governments because this is industrial espionage. And yeah, there are some who practice it more than others. China is typically practicing it, although since there's been a reorganization in the People's Liberation Army since 2016, where they are now more attacking some state targets. Before that, that was more to gain some industrial secrets by attacking some Western companies in not even in stealth mode. Actually, they got caught by the Americans around 2013-14. Barack Obama used it as a leverage in his discussion with Xi Jinping and to negotiate in trade agreements. And then from there on, the PLA started to be more in stealth mode and hide their tracks, which they were not even bothering to do beforehand. Now, the Americans are also practicing these kind of things, and even towards the the Europeans. The Europeans are also doing it a little bit, but a bit less so.
Okay, Fabien, a question for you. Since you have to ensure all this, we have seen several types of intervention here. So, is it possible to protect against the guy who is motivated by fame, etc., living in his bedroom and taking some time in order to attack, or for business or for the state? Do you protect everything, or do you say something you cannot protect?
Okay. We have some experience in terms of cyber insurance, so you can see that. So most of the multinational company or corporate company, private company, are insuring in terms of cyber. Why? Because it's so random, and the question at the end is also the conclusion. It's absolutely impossible to cover all risk. Why? Because so, as Frederick mentioned, it's about the different type of attacks. At the end, so we can see that on the website, on the news, different type of attack. But at the end, it's always the same things. So it's to use the IT system. So what is an IT system for states, for private companies? So it's coming from the mobile device to the entire IT ecosystem of the company. If you're using a car, it's also a device that can be attacked, because all system now, all business now is covering by IT system. So it's easy to cover that. So what is the purpose? The purpose is to determine what will be the value of the IT system we can cover. So if you look at a company, the different type of company have different type of risk and the value of the risk. So, and it's based on the business activity. If you're talking about industrial company, it's absolutely different to a retail company, because we're talking about IT system. The IT system is a support to use the attack. But inside the IT system, there is a data. This is the purpose of the cyber attack. So if you're talking about corporate against corporate, using activists to save some, trade secrets, patents, it's a value of data. And so they're using, the IT system to protect that.
And when you have to compute how much you charge for that, because we have to pay you for that. At the end of the day, it's based on what? On the amount of data, on the sensitivity of data?
You have to look at the risk, and you have to look at in terms of risk appreciation. So we have an IT system, and based on the IT system, so we have a certain level of protection and certain level of prevention. That's why this is the job of Frederick. My job is to look at the value and what will be, and to take a picture about the cyber policy in place for the organization. So we're talking about different, software for protection, antivirus. This is the beginning, when you change your password every 60 days or every 30 days, it's a certain level of protection. So, and this level of protection will give you an appreciation about the quality of the risk. More you have protection, automatically, I will say that the premium or the price is cheaper. But it's not based on that. It's not only based on the level of the IT system. It's also based on the level of the type of risk and data. When we're talking about retail, we're talking about, for example, data privacy. Marketing agency, it's a huge type of risk. Industrial sector, it's absolutely different. It's more mechanical. It's in terms of production, etc.
So is it expensive or not?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It depends how healthy the company is. It's exactly when you're taking a health insurance. Sadly, if you're older, overweight, smoking,
Why do you look at me?
we're probably the same age. Your premium is going to be higher than if you're 20 years old and you're a triathlete. So for a company, it's the same. If its cyber risk is quantified as being low, then it will be easier for them to transfer the residual risk to an insurer, because risk zero for a state, for a company, for any kind of organization, for an individual, it doesn't exist. So you can never eliminate the cyber risk like you can never eliminate any kind of risk. And by having some best practices, not only on the technical infrastructure, but on the people as well, then you can significantly reduce this risk, sometimes at a cost which is not huge. And then you can go to an insurer like Fabien and say, look, I've quantified my cyber risk. I'm taking some actions, and I'm taking some regular actions which prove that my level of risk is diminishing in time. And I've got the history to show you that. And therefore, you go to Fabien and you say, I can get a premium which is lower than the average because I'm in good health.
Good. So I have an additional question for this. When so you are saying that the company or the institution has also to do its own job. It means we cannot transfer everything to outsider, or we can transfer everything to the outsider. In that case, it takes time, it takes money, etc. So do you think that there are situations where people don't want to do anything? They're just telling you, you are professionals, you do your job.
On the insurance side or on the technical, on both sides? Well, you start.
If you take the example of ransomware.
Everybody knows what is ransomware? Huh? Okay.
So
please.
you have, you have been attacked, and you look at your screen or all your monitors, you have the red screen. And yeah, and so so guys, so we have been hacked. So we have 24 hours to pay the ransomware. If you're not paid, so you will degrade your entire data system, or you will, failure your IT system. So you have to pay. Just a feedback experience of clients I've met. You receive a ransomware, the red screen, etc. Say, okay, there is a ransomware, so I have to pay. So he called us with a different specialist, for the forensic, for negotiate with hackers, because it's part of negotiation. It's a negotiation with a hacker,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And he told me, oh, it's okay, it's simple. The ransomware, it's 1,000. Okay, I'm ready to pay. Okay, there is a type of risk if you pay, because you don't know behind this hacker what is the motivation, and you don't know if it's a criminal organization or if it's just only your activists. So they say, I'm ready to pay. And he called back the forensic specialist to say, shit, so I don't have a Bitcoin account. So when you're talking about 1,000, it's not 1,000 USD, it's not 1,000 euro, it was 1,000 Bitcoins.
It's not the same amount.
It's not the same amount.
No.
So my question is, do you know which company, private company, who has a Bitcoin account to pay some, transfer in Bitcoin? It doesn't exist. The cyber risk, the cyber security system, it's an ecosystem with different providers, from insurer, from broker, from specialists like Frederic. And you're using the cybersecurity provider for forensic, for negotiate. They're using some specific accounts to pay maybe the Bitcoin if necessary. Of course, the advice is not to pay, etc. So it's very complex.
Since we're talking about payments, Frederic, do you have an experience in the state accept pay?
The states, the companies pay. They pay all the time because there is absolutely no other way than that. And when a company's got ransomed and for $1 million in Bitcoin, and they come to us, we say, too late. Sorry, the only thing that you can do is pay now and hope that we recover your system and that they will unlock your system. And the next thing we will do for you is make sure that this doesn't happen a second time, because actually when you've been ransomed once and you paid, you've got 80% of chances of being ransomed again in the next 12 months because you've hung a target on your back. Now, would states pay? Usually states are not ransomed. Companies are ransomed. States operate in the frame of cyber warfare. So the motivation is not greed, except for one country, which is North Korea, where they're completely bankrupt, and North Korea's hackers are there to try and steal some bitcoins wherever they can. A state, I do not have any example of a state who has paid a ransom, because I do not have any example of a state which was actually ransomed. Companies are ransomed. And we've got the example of Colonial Pipeline in the United States in May 2021, which is very famous now, probably the most famous hack, because it was a Russian mafia group that attacked a mid-size infrastructure company in the east coast of the United States. It disrupted the supply of gasoline in petrol stations. They asked for $4.4 million of ransom. And immediately Colonial Pipeline called the FBI, who told them, you've got only one way of solving this, pay the ransom.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the advice.
They pay the ransom. And then the thing is that in Bitcoins, when you pay in Bitcoins, after you've got to go through a mixer, and this is to launder this money, it's not a simple process. And the FBI was actually capable of recovering 3 million out of 4.4 million.
Okay.
So that wasn't too bad. But in the meantime, Joe Biden had to declare the state of emergency in 4 states and dispatch the military to ensure that there was some supply of gasoline. So that was a mix. The state didn't pay the ransom. The company paid the ransom. The state helped to recover. But this was a major impact. A state of emergency during a couple of weeks in 4 states of the United States, dispatch of the military, just because a Russian mafia group hacked a mid-sized infrastructure company. This was a dramatic impact.
For most of the states, all states will tell you that, no, we're not paying the ransom.
Of course. No.
It's like, negotiate with terrorists. Oh, no,
No.
you will not pay the ransom for terrorists. It's the same thing. Yeah. There is
Exactly.
official speech and unofficial speech.
I have an addition question for this. Since you mentioned some states active in this kind of activity, during your experience, did you find always the usual suspects, that is North Koreans, Russians, etc.? Did you find also some countries that we didn't suspect, and in fact the attack was coming from them?
Yeah, there are some usual suspects, and we all know who they are. So first of all, the largest cyber defense or attack capacity in the world, that's the United States, and that's for sure. Now there is also the question of how they're using it, mostly for defensive and intelligence purposes. You've got obviously Russia. So Russia has something which is particular, which is that we were talking about different types of attackers, and there are the mafia groups which are motivated by greed, and the states which are just here to defend their own interests, and therefore in the military, a cyber department, and there is one in the French DGSE, for example. There are here people who are doing this, they're just doing their jobs, basically. So there is some in Russia, and there are some mafia groups in Russia. The particularity of it is that these two are intertwined, and that the Russian state is making use of some mafia groups to help in subversion and destabilization. So not in military attacks, but when we talk about cyber, it's a very loose term for the use of information and communication technologies. And remember that there are the three acts of warfare, which is intelligence, subversion, and force. So these mafia groups in Russia are used for subversion, and particularly to do what we call the dark information. And this is everything that yields around conspiracy theories, and with one principle, which is to just spread dissent among people who do not have the keys to understand complex information. So if you look at the Maslow pyramid, or the needs for people, you go and appeal to the lowest instincts, anger, jealousy, and etc. And you excite people, you arouse people. You don't know in which direction are they going. Are they going to go to the far right? Are they going to go to the far left? You don't know. But what you know is that they are going to put a mess in an existing situation. And this is why you have all these anti-vax, conspiracy theories, Brexit, Donald Trump in the US, and etc.
Vaccines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of this is not is very easy to trigger. You do not have to launch some sophisticated campaign. You just launch some rumors, and then you will always have some people to amplify it, just for the sake of fame, getting some clicks, and etc. And then you fall in what is called the rabbit hole, or the algorithmic lockdown. And when you get into that, you will get all this kind of information. Then usual suspects, China was more in the industrial spying until 2016, and now it's more strategic and military and stealth. Ukrainian mafia groups. In terms of military operation, Israel, Stuxnet, and the Nathan uranium enrichment plant in Iran.
Yeah.
That was a super sophisticated attack. So yeah, we've mentioned them.
Since it is super sophisticated, sometimes I have a question for Fabien. In the term of insurance, as you mentioned, health insurance is voluntary. But concerning fire, concerning anything, it is compulsory for companies and for individuals to protect their homes. Do you think that in cybersecurity, there is an obligation from the legal point of view to be protected? So that's one. And the second one is when you are proposing some solutions, do we have some standards? Do we have an ISO concerning cybersecurity protection and insurance or not?
The cyber insurance is not compulsory insurance, like work injury compensation or different country who has some regulation to buy compulsory insurance. So when a company or sometimes states, based on administration, decide to buy cyber insurance or look at this, it's based on motivation to protect the business. Protect the business in terms of cyber insurance, it's to cover consequences of any cyber attack. And the purpose of any cyber insurance is to cover the IT system and the data. So if you have a multinational company or a SME company who wants to push out the cyber insurance, it's also based on the different cyber policy in place on a large company. I'll give you an example. The largest company like Google, Facebook have cybersecurity policy in place, and they ask for any vendors, or if you are a marketing agency and you work with Facebook, Google, so there is a requirement, insurance requirement. So yeah, no, it's not compulsory, but most of the largest multinational company put in place some cyber policy, some insurance requirements. So me, as a big company, I'm covering in insurance. I want that all my vendor, all my partner has to be insured as well in order to cover the undervaluation in terms of the IT system or the data you will work on it, etc., etc. So no, it's not compulsory. It's based on the market trend and requirement for multinational companies.
But we already have protection against, let's say, political risk or against economic risk. Why don't we have this cyber risk protection?
It's based on the maturity of different companies about the perception of the cyber.
Okay, fine.
It's because also companies and organizations in general, they are good at quantifying risk when it comes to natural disaster and even political risk. A typhoon, for example, you know that there is a season for the typhoon, and when you see the typhoon appearing, you know that it's going to be there in 3 or 4 days or 5 days, and you can predict all that. And there is the seasonality. Forest fires, the same. You can see with intelligence if there is some turmoil, social risks, and etc. So these risks are pretty well quantified by either the intelligence department at the state level or what is called the chief risk officer in multinational companies. But cyber risk quantification is in its infancy. I think that the term was coined in 2016 only. And this is also what my company is doing. It's something that did not exist before. And there is a difficulty because risk when it is linked to natural disaster, and this is the first risk, ranked as the risk number 1 in the world at the moment, is natural disasters because of global warming. It's the risk number 1. This one is fairly well quantified because it's frequential, and there's plenty of mathematical equations that define it. Cyber risk is behavioral. It relies on motivation of attackers and of defenders. And these ones evolve in time constantly, and they're all moving around the world, and there is no seasonality or a very little portion of seasonality, no more than 20 or 30%, which explains why cyber risk quantification has never been done properly. It starts to be done now for the past 2 or 3 years. It's been done very manually 5 years to 10 years ago, and it starts only now to be automated.
Very interesting, because you are using the term behavior, and Fabien is using this term perception. So it means that we are not in the, let's say, mathematical approach. We are more in the cultural approach. So would you say that cybersecurity is a cultural thing? That's strange for many people, because we believe that we are only talking about machines, we are only talking about algorithm, and you are talking about something else. So how come that we have culture which is intervening in this field, Fabien?
When I mentioned perception and behavior, it's about your perception about the risk. So and especially in terms of cyber, and provide a quantification of cyber. It's very difficult, because the idea is to cover an IT system. The idea is to cover data. So what is the value of the trade secrets? What is the value of a data privacy portfolio clients? What is the value if this data has been stolen? The perception is very difficult to have in terms of the value, because we're talking about business or in terms of states. So how can you quantify that? The easiest way to have an appreciation about the consequences of cyber attack, it's about the business interruption. You have your entire IT system. When you look at the Essex school, I'll let you imagine, see if all laptops have been hacked, and or M laptops or the IT system of Essex school is destroyed. During one week, 2 weeks, you will not be able to provide a minimum of services. Okay, you will be virtual, but it will be loss of revenue lot of different, expenses, etc. So it's easier to quantify like this. But when you're talking about data, it's getting more and more difficult. Really?
Yeah. On the cultural aspect, cyber insurances, as Fabien said, they're not mandatory, and they appeal more easily to cultures that are seeing further in the future, and who also, if we refer to Hofstede or Trompenas, have a high uncertainty avoidance index. So that, for example, in Germany, which is a very high uncertainty avoidance index, not to be confused with risk adverse. It's going to be easier to sell an insurance because people say, well, there is a certain portion of risk that I haven't been able to eliminate, and I've got some plans, and I don't want my plans to be disrupted, and therefore I need to be covered in terms of residual risk by a cyber insurance. Countries who have a lower uncertainty index will say, all right, I'm going to take my chances. It's expensive, and maybe if I'm getting sometimes even not a healthier lifestyle, then maybe I will not be hit. But the problem is that 54% of organizations declared having suffered from a major cyber attack last year. And this is those who dared to declare it, 54%, which means that the reality is closer to 80% or rather 100%. I'm pretty sure that this year in 2022 is going to be over 100%, which means that there is going to be at least one major cyber attack per major company during the course of the year. And you've got some people also who, are overweight and smoking and keep on drinking alcohol and say, well, maybe I won't get cancer.
Look at me, yes. All vices, he is looking at me. I have one question about, since we are talking about the international aspect of it. Frédéric, your company is a Singaporean company, a French company. What is this? And do you refrain to work with some countries or with some governments, or are you open to cooperation with everyone?
So my company is headquartered in Singapore. It has a 100% subsidiary in France, where most of the engineering team is. We're a cloud-based company, so which means that for some markets we need to have the software in the data center, which is on the soil of the particular country. So no, we won't go to China. No, we won't go to Russia.
Even if they pay well?
Yes. Oh, no. This is absolutely out of the question. This is absolutely out of the question. We have a very high respect for Israeli cyber security companies, but they're very strong competitors, and they're kind of dangerous. So,
but sometimes competitors can be friends.
Oh, we will meet them. We will meet them on the competition ground, and we have very high respect for them. We know that they're extremely good. We will go to the United States, that's for sure. I've got one of my partners who is reluctant because he's got a little bit of anti-American culture, but that's acceptable.
And do you think that in this business, it is frequent to have people navigating, let's say, coming from military, going to the private waters, going back to the military, or do you think that it is completely separate?
Oh, from the military to private is very frequent.
Okay.
Yes. Everywhere. Okay. United States, France. Two of my partners are coming from the Ministry of Armed Forces. Israel, first and foremost. All these people from the cyber department of the Mossad are just after 7 or 10 years, they're setting up their startups sometimes in cybersecurity, sometimes not, but applying the same principle. So I don't know if you know these companies called Tabula and Outbrain.
No.
So when you go onto a very serious website like French newspaper Le Monde.fr or the Allgemeine Zeitung or MSNBC or etc. You scroll down, and at the end you've got some ads, and most of them are clickbaits.
Okay.
And this is brought to you by Tabula or brought to you by Outbrain, and this is called content marketing.
Okay.
So the algorithm which are behind that are targeting you specifically. They're sucking all your browsing history, all the trace that you've left on the web, and believe me, there's
we
a
leave
lot
something
of,
on the web? No.
yeah,
No, we don't leave anything.
you leave that, you know, the version of your graphic card in your computer is I can get it. You just click one button on the web, and I get the version of your OS and your graphic card and etc. On your mobile phone.
I switch off.
On the mobile phone as well. So you know, all this information, they are gathered, and you leave your ID card, and you get this so-called content marketing, which in many cases is rubbish, but sometimes it's very effective. And Tabula and Outbrain were founded by ex-Mossad people.
How convenient. Hey, Fabien, going back to the insurance, you are operating in various countries at the same time. So do you observe that there are some, I would say, legal or regulatory differences concerning cybersecurity? For instance, you cannot protect something, or you cannot protect it sufficiently, or you cannot do something from one country to the other? Or do you think that since cybersecurity doesn't know borders, in that case, insurance doesn't know borders either?
So far, you discussed about cyber attack, but we have to consider about cyber defense as well. So all states and all countries, whatever you know the capabilities, have some cyber defense, and so that's why some people coming from military space in cyber and go in private space. And cyber defense coming from any state means regulation, local regulation, in order to protect the nation, in order to protect, you know, some infrastructure or critical infrastructure. So there is some specific regulation, but it's more about military angle. In terms of individual consumer, there is more and more regulation, especially in Europe, the GDPR, to protect, you know, individual in terms of data privacy. Okay. So we can see there are more and more potential in terms of data privacy, and especially with GDPR, but it's existing. It's been 20 years now. The first regulation in terms of data privacy coming from California states in US in 2004, if my memory is good. And more regulation, you know, are put in place and set up in the different countries. When I look at this, there is no specific international regulation. It's country by country, or European Union, or US, etc.
But if it is country per country, and if we have Google, for instance, and let's say Google has a general policy, but Google is present here in Singapore, it is present in the US, it is present everywhere. What does it mean? It means that they cannot have the same protection from one country to the other?
In fact, it's this type of company like Google, they set up a cyber policy.
Yeah, but you are insuring them. They don't insure themselves. Huh?
No, but Google cyber policy set up a specific level of confidentiality for consumer, set a level of security when you navigate or search on different applications. In addition, being compliant based on the local regulation. So if you look at, for example, WhatsApp or Facebook, or when you look at some different states, whatever the world, some states want to use or ask to Facebook or WhatsApp, okay, can you review this level of security, because I don't want to have a certain level of privacy of my population.
Okay.
So it's another way to look at, or what is the cybersecurity is doing that. We're talking about Google in terms of cyber or whatever insurance. Most of the people using GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook. So it's part of the cyber policy. It's a minimum requirement to use a specific area or specific solution used by all, a company or all person.
Fabien, you are selling insurance concerning cybersecurity. Did you ever lose money on cybersecurity?
Me as a broker? Never.
Yeah. No, that's a nice thing. And the insurer?
Insurer.
Yeah. So they lost a ton of money in 2021.
No. How come? This is why they don't want to insure anymore.
Yeah.
Huh?
In terms of cyber insurance market, so you have to look at the evolution. 10 years ago, the evolution in cyber insurance market evolved based on regulation, especially in terms of data privacy since 2004. The trigger was the GDPR regulation
in Europe.
2012 or 15, my memory is good. And we have seen the evolution and the structuration of the cyber insurance market. So everybody was happy, So everybody wanted to purchase cyber insurance. Insurer was very happy. Me, I was happy, as an intermediary. Everybody was happy, even provider of cybersecurity.
Until
COVID-19 period.
Okay.
Evolution of type of attacks. Insurance in terms of risk, we're talking about frequency and intensity. Okay? We can consider that ransomware is like a frequency, but the intensity of the ransomware is getting higher, and especially since COVID-19, because most of the people, was in remote, working from home, so using, different IT system or devices. So it was, a good period, and it was profitable for any activists as well. So we have to don't forget them. It's also profitable for them and business. And most of the insurer, that paid ransom, paid some, claims, insurance claim, and the cyber insurance market, suffered on the last 2 years.
I have one question for you, Frédéric. So people are coming to you and they're asking you to protect them. Is it possible that people are coming to you and asking you to attack someone?
No.
Why not?
Because
if you can defend, you can attack, huh?
Of course we can.
So what?
Actually, yes, we can.
You can?
Yes. And actually what our software is doing is simulating an attack. It's like if you're doing a stress test. So it's not actually attacking.
Do you attack yourself or do you attack someone else?
No. The customer is paying to attack itself or to simulate an attack in itself.
Okay.
And basically it's going to patrol around the company and say, here you have one window which is open, close your window, or lock the door because you've left the door unlocked. Or for example, you've got an administrator account which username is
1, 2, 3,
classroom and password is ESSEC.
This is very, very difficult to crack. This is very difficult to crack.
So, this is cracked in a matter of seconds because you're running the brute force simulation for hacking and you got it immediately. So we can, but there is a myth about this hacker, Kevin Mitnick, back in the 90s, who hacked through social engineering, basically invented social engineering or make it known to the public, and then worked as a consultant for the FBI after serving jail time. This is highly publicized, but when you've worked in a government organization and served your country in a cyber department, you've done it for no money, a certain ideal, and the passion for technology, and you're on the good side, and you stay on the good side. And when you're on the bad side, when you've been motivated by greed or motives which are not honorable, it is very unlikely that you go on the good side.
There is no redemption?
Well, this is
You
a
don't believe in
this
this,
is
huh?
a philosophical
don't
question.
believe in
So
this,
that's
huh?
going to be another roundtable.
Okay,
So to come back to your question, no, because when you have a customer who says, I need to have some kind of patrol by a security company around my perimeter, you sign a contract, you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and you share data, and there is a whole lot of conditions, and it is absolutely impossible for a decent cybersecurity company to go to hack someone and go to them and say, look, I've just hacked you, so buy my services, because this is typically the ransomware business model.
Definitely.
And this is not the honorable way. So
okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some usual suspects, especially on the Russian side, but Russia is very good in cybersecurity with a company called Kaspersky.
Yeah.
So do you believe that Kaspersky is a Russian company? Do you believe that it is not a Russian company? Do you believe that we should trust them? What do you think about it? Huh?
This is a trap question. One of my partners used to work at Kaspersky for 2 years in threat analysis. No, I can't answer. Sorry. Joker. I can't answer. No, it is originally a Russian company. It has become an international company. It's been accepted on the market, and now there are some words of caution here and there, like there are on Huawei, because they're supposed to have some backdoors and etc. on their equipment. Difficult for me to say. I can't comment on that.
Okay, so sorry for the question. We are at 9:23. I have tons of questions for everyone here, but we have a wonderful number of people who are here in the classroom, and I believe that they may have plenty of questions for you. So I would like to open the floor for the questions. If you have some questions for our true guest, it would be very nice. So we will start with the ladies here. I have two ladies, and after that we'll move on the other side, please.
Sorry. I have two questions.
Yeah.
I have two questions. Thank you very much. First one is about protection. Now you were talking about the IT infrastructure in a company. Of course, we should set up a level of protection internal, but IT has evolved a lot. Now we work with a lot of partners. It is an all system based on services, infrastructure as a service, for instance. You talked about Google and its data privacy or data protection policy, internal policy. How can you protect when all the systems are opened today? And the second question is also linked. If we are attacked, how can we evaluate the risk, not only the risk of and the probability of being attacked, but what can be done with the data stolen? One example, if I am Tesla, okay, I've been stolen, I don't know, a patent, but how can I ensure that this data will not endanger all my future consumer, all my future cars? Because I will use maybe the same algorithms that have been stolen, but how can I protect my customer, and can I ensure that nothing will happen in the future due to this stolen data? Thank you.
Yeah. No. Not for me. Now, in terms of protection, so we have to consider two things, like I mentioned about the data. What is the type of data? Privacy data, trade secret, or usual data, like Excel sheet. And to host this data,
whatever the company, and this is the evolution now, more and more data and more hosts using data center, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And you can see that your data, your own data or for any company is more and more externalized and more deeper to your company. If you remember, 20, 30 years ago, your data was in a hardware server, in the basement. So now the basement doesn't exist here anymore. The hardware server doesn't exist here anymore. It's in data center based in maybe here in Singapore. There is a lot of data centers, for the region. You can use Google with a data center based in US. So your data, it's more and more externalized, but we still remain responsible of this data. And if you have an attack and if you have this data stolen, whatever the level of externalization, there is a valuation of responsibility. If you're talking about a data center, like OVH in France or a different data center, they are responsible of the data hosted by a third party. Third party means company, So the cyber policy is correct and the requirement are correct. The entire valuation is covered, It was your first question. And the second question was, sorry.
How to evaluate the consequence risk.
Okay, to evaluate the consequence in terms of risk, because I look at also the question, I think it will be a mix. The key point is about the detection first. How can you detect an attack? The second point is about the evaluation. Based on claims and situation I've met for some clients, it's very difficult to provide a good evaluation. I have two examples. One, it's about one of my clients called me and he told me that, oh, I have a data center in this country, has been attacked by a competitor. And this competitor used activists and he paid activists $25 per hour to do some denial of services, So, and he told me that I'm in current crisis situation and I'm hacked. So can you help me? Of course, yeah, you will set up some different crisis management situation. You set up some different provider, etc., etc. So all was under control in terms of evaluation, etc. It was the beginning of the crisis, and I said, okay, but call me when the crisis and the attacker will decided to stop to attack you. He called me 6 weeks later. So in terms of evaluation, it's very difficult because we are facing a crisis. It could be a crisis situation. It could be a few hours. It could be several weeks, several months, or something like that. And it's not only we have to evaluate the direct loss and indirect losses, because you have to set up some different situation, crisis management situation. And so there is direct losses and direct costs. So it's difficult. For a simple, crisis for a few hours, I've seen some situation in terms of evaluation talking about 500,000 losses. For a crisis during 1 or 2 weeks, we're talking about 1,000 USD losses. So it's different. So it's not easy, and it's a lot of aspects.
You want to add something?
Quickly on the first question, everything is in the cloud now, and this is why it's important also to have not only cyber risk quantification on the company itself, but on its third parties and the suppliers. So if you've got Google as a supplier, their evaluation is going to be very good. There are some other companies, and I'm not going to mention the names, a supplier of Singtel, for example, that was responsible for a hack at Singtel. This supplier had a vulnerability that had been open for 5 years and not fixed. And you could find this on the web by doing a simple search, launch a crawler, and do a background check on this supplier. And you could have seen immediately that their track record was not was not good, and Sigtel, you shouldn't have never contracted with them. So that's why, you know, companies sometimes they're evaluating their own cyber risk, but they forget to evaluate this, the third parties, and everybody's connected. So that's the first thing. Now on data theft, the tip of the iceberg, this is the ransomware because it's seen, but the biggest cost and the cost to the world economy of cybercrime is $5.5 trillion a year, 5,500 billions of dollars a year. And what we don't see is data theft. We see the ransomware because it's publicized and it's in the newspaper, but data theft most of the time is carried out in a stealth mode. So you don't even know that your data has been stolen, and it can be stolen during years and years and years. And then you discover it when you get killed by a competitor that you haven't seen coming, and that's it, and you're out of business.
So if it is 5.5 trillion, he is insuring 5.5 trillion. Huh? Yes, yes, you do. You do.
A portion of that. This is your total accessible market. Okay.
It's a new business. It's a new market.
It's a new market.
Yeah,
but 5.5 trillion, no. Of course. We have another question here, please.
I would say, in the sense that we talked a lot about the short-term consequences, right? So, for example, if you have a ransom, so you have to pay, of course, and then you have the reinsurance system coming into play. My question would be more for companies like working in the R&D field or innovation field with a very long process from a research perspective. I was wondering how you ensure more the long-term business consequences. For example, you are about to launch, let's say, the great super future blockbuster. You think that, and you have behind you, of course, a kind of 10 years of R&D. Do you pay, I would say, and do you ensure the fact that we will lose a kind of 10 years business upfront because of that? So it was a bit my question on long-run business consequences, and I will not ask how much it costs because I guess we will not get the answer. So
you can ask, huh?
Long-run business mean sustainable business, mean project. We cannot cover the potential markets you can gain for a project or something like that. There is an example, it's about, do you remember the movie, The Interview? The Interview with James Franco. And it's a good example in order to summarize also a discussion and to give you an answer about this. It's about one of the this movie has been acted because it was a sarcastic movie, you know, and especially for Kim Jong-un in North Korea, and North Korea decided to attack Sony PlayStation.
Sony,
yeah. And I'm taking this example as an question because it's a potential gain of business. When you have some, you know, production, cinema, movie like this, it's a gain of market, gain of production. So how can you evaluate that? It's very difficult. So insurance, you know, is very basic. Sometimes it's very old school and old-fashioned. And cover some prediction in terms of potential market you can gain, it's absolutely impossible. It's the same when waiting on the different market or shares. So for value, it's more focusing about, you know, your financial statements and revenue you can we have gained, etc., etc. But it's not the first time I've made this question because we have seen some different, you know, company wants to cover a specific project, but specific project it's under an organization, so we have to cover the organization first, and after that maybe you can consider to look at the project and the potential gain. Why not? But we are not here to predict the future. We are not here to predict, you know, the potential gain or loss you will have. So yeah.
Frédéric?
Yeah, so when it comes to an R&D department and long-term project, and the prophylactic measures that you can take, is to allocate the budgets properly and the priorities properly. For the companies that try to build walls, cyber walls with no risk, the cost is infinite. And what is important is to the decision makers to decide what is their risk appetite according to the areas of their company. And of course, an engineering team, an R&D center, has a much lower risk appetite than a function of the company, which is less strategic. And there's no disrespect in that. There are some areas of the company which are fundamentally strategic, and there are some which are less. And you can never eliminate the rest and the risk on a technical point of view, but it is absolutely paramount that the physical security is ensured in an R&D department, that the IT infrastructure is absolutely secured, that people are trained very thoroughly on phishing risks or any kind of social engineering, that background checks are done on people and suppliers, if any, and therefore you will get the whole list rolled down for this R&D department, and that's the best way to protect yourself. And you would not do this for some other areas of the company, and you must not do this for all areas of the company, because you're throwing some money out the window. And if there is a hack at some point, because there will be one, the important thing is to have the proper measures to contain it in order that it doesn't spread, to identify it as quickly as possible and to eliminate it.
Good. I have 3 more questions. One here, and one there, please.
Yes. Thank you very much for your input this morning. My question is, we talk a lot about big groups, big companies, such as Google or I don't know, others. What are the best practices for small companies? How can they protect themselves against such danger or thing like that?
He is very expensive, huh?
I know.
So,
I know.
This is why you asked the question, huh?
It is actually not so expensive as that to take some health measures first.
A good sales guy.
A good sales guy. He works for you.
I'm gonna sell some insurances for him. It's like walking 30 minutes every day. It doesn't cost you much, and it has some huge benefits. And the thing is that 80% or even maybe 90% of cybersecurity spending are on the curative part, on fixing things. And only 10 to 20% are in prevention. And we all know in healthcare that prevention is 10 times less costly, if not more, than the cure. You'd rather walk or run 30 minutes every day rather than having a heart attack and a fix for a heart attack at the hospital. So taking some measures, and let me take a very trivial example. I saw a consultancy company that had some 300 remote consultants. They're all working from home, and they're actually independent consultants affiliated to this company. So they're coming with their own devices and etc. And this company had provided Microsoft 365, formerly Office 365, to all their consultants. And they just forgot to activate the endpoint detection and response, EDR software, which is Microsoft Defender, inside their license. Basically, all these consultants were connecting to the company and exchanging some confidential information about their own customers on a completely unsecure network, because they were all from internet and from home, and they had not activated the basic defense software, which was in their license. Cost 0, or just telling them, please do this, click there, click that, approximately 2 minutes, and activate Microsoft Defender or Microsoft Intune into your mobile phone. And that was included in the license. Now, you don't know that if you haven't run a check first. So the first thing is to run a health check. And running a health check, which is what we're doing basically, is not expensive at all. And then you can go to an insurer and say, look, I've got 300 distributed consultants. They are working from home. We've made sure that all their routers at home are having a proper password when they connect to it. We've made sure that the administration of their routers is no longer admin and admin, which is the case by default on all Cisco routers. And we've made sure that they've all activated Microsoft Defender on their laptop on the Microsoft 365. Then you go to the insurer who's got a little bit of knowledge on technology and says, okay, looks pretty good. And they will say, I know I'm going to get hacked. Can you insure me for the residual risk? And then the insurer will say, all right, you've already taken some proper measures. I can provide you a cyber insurance, which hopefully is not going to be $100,000 a year, but much less than that. I hope so. So yeah.
It reminds me one thing when you travel, and when I ask you to buy travel insurance, but maybe with your credit card you already have a travel insurance.
Correct.
So it's the same thing here.
Yes.
Maybe you already have protection, but you're not activating it, and you don't even know about that.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to check. Maybe you're already protected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after that, you're looking something else. Yeah. So 100,000?
No.
How much?
Much less than that. Much less.
We have another question here.
Yeah, I have a question. I guess for the insurance, you are pretty much amazing or choosing your customer for their good. But if I have I would like interest in ransomware, for instance, this amount of information that you own turn you into a target. Instead of wasting my time to target your customers, I just have to target the insurer. So are you protected against cybersecurity?
Are you protected?
Are you protected against cyber risk? Because with all the amount of information and data you own about your customers, now you are a target.
Yes.
Yes. No, your question is about the insurance company covering some risk for customers. So does this insurance company has also covered and all collection of data, all collection information of insured by the insurer also a certain level of protection and also insured. An insurance company is also a private company, and they are also covered. Yeah. And most of the insurance companies also purchase themselves a cyber insurance program.
Yeah.
Well, the financial services industry is generally the best prepared for this kind of things. The spendings on banks and insurance on cybersecurity is the highest among private companies.
Definitely. We have another question here.
Oh, sorry.
On the back. And after that, we have two questions.
Good morning.
And the third one. Okay.
Sorry in advance, Fabien, for this question.
That's for him.
So, of course, it's easier to prevent the risk of attacks rather than spending money on insurance, right? If I have 100,000, right now, what I fear is that I would rather spend $100,000 on defending my company rather than spending on the insurance. Okay.
Going to the emergency room and then to the operation room and have a heart transplant. What you need to do is prevention complemented by insurance. This is the proper prophylactic measures. It's not prevention or insurance. It's prevention, and by prevention, you reduce the risk, but there is always a residual risk, and you transfer this residual risk to an insurer. Yeah. And what you want to avoid is having a heart transplant. Okay. So you you do some exercise, and you take a health insurance. You always do that. If you want to, you have a healthy lifestyle. I have a health insurance and a healthy lifestyle, which does not guarantee me that I will not end up in the operation room, but this is what you want to avoid.
Okay. But that was easier.
You have the answer?
Yeah.
Good morning, Frederic and Fabien. So based on your own expertise and experience, what is the biggest challenge you face with your customers today?
They do not anticipate. They come and see us when the problem has already happened. It's too late.
So there is no proactive approach?
Yes, there is. There is. Of course, there is. And everybody should be taking a proactive approach. You've got two kinds of companies that are taking proactive approach. These are the early adopters and people who are anticipating. That's 5% or 10%. And most of them, there are the tech companies. And then you've got a bit more the financial services industries because they're regulated and they need to provide some audits. And sometimes they need to comply to standards such as ISO 27001 or ISO 31000. Then all the other ones, they say, I heard from a former managing director of a French bank in Singapore. He was responsible for all of ASEAN for a French bank. I'm not going to tell you who that is, who told to me, I'm not sure I need your software because honestly, what are the odds of me being attacked next year? And my partner and I looked at each other and said, mate, 100%, 150%. We didn't tell him that, but that was a lost cause. But this is reflecting how many, still 80% of people think. They think, I'm going to roll the dice, I'm going to take my chances, and it's not going to happen to me. It will happen to you. The question is not if, it's when.
When, yeah.
And then you've got when it happens. And then people are in panic mode. And people are losing their jobs and production lines are disrupted. A tennis racket manufacturer 1 month before Roland Garros hacked for 1 million euros, ransomed, panic mode. 400 jobs at stake, survival of the company. And say, help us. Okay, pay the ransom. We can
Impact is huge. So in case of failure, so how much does it cost to accept your reputation? I want some numbers, please.
So you want some numbers? Look, if you yeah, so let me give you some numbers. The average amount of ransom which is asked is growing every month, and at the moment we should be we're above $1 million. We're above $1 million. Recovery from a ransomware attack, you take the amount of the ransom, basically you multiply it by 3 to 5. So cost of recovery, $3 to $5 million on average, which means that there are some ransoms which are $10,000, $20,000. Because mind you, the attacker doesn't want to shut down the company. They want to keep the patient alive, that they can attack them again, for them to pay again. So when you are attacked for a ransom of $1 million, then you will call someone. Usually these are specialists who used to work in the military or etc. and former spooks. They will go and negotiate the ransom down. And usually if you've been ransomed for $1 million, you will get this one down to $300,000. And then you will be partially unlocked. And then you can restart your company at a cost of $1 or $2 million because there's been some disruption of business. And then your data is still out with the attacker who can use it, who can publish it, do whatever they want with it. And these are the numbers. If you take some proper measures, prevention measures, cyber risk quantification, this is going to cost you for such a company around $30,000 to $50,000 a year. And you can run the test as much as you want. And the insurance will be in the vicinity of what? Same thing? Yeah, approximately that. So overall, this is going to cost you 60,000 to 100,000 US dollars a year to avoid the risk of bankruptcy, again, ransoming, major cyber attacks, 54% of companies last year. So, and it cost $3 million to recover from it. So would you like to spend $100,000 a year to avoid damage of $3 million? 100,000, 3 million, 1 to 30. That's the ratio.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing.
A question for you, Frederic. If you can elaborate, please, more on the race for innovation between the cybersecurity companies and the hackers. And beyond that, if I'm a company and I need help for cybersecurity, what are the criteria? Why will I choose you and not another company? What are the criteria? And how you
forcing
guarantee?
me to do a sales pitch here.
No, and how
I
you
was not
guarantee?
coming here for that.
And how you guarantee your efficiency in this world that is innovating every day?
Yes, so it's absolutely a race between. You can check me out online. I'm not going to do some shameless advertisement. It starts with an X. There's a race. The race is on the vulnerability, on the technical side. So there are approximately 50 to 60 new vulnerabilities that affect software most of the time, which are discovered every day. And there is this concept of 0 day, which means that the vulnerability has not yet been patched, and therefore the doors are opened, and not only the doors are open, but you cannot close them because the mechanism to close the door doesn't exist yet. And this is how Singtel got hacked by using a supplier that had left the door open for 5 years without bothering it.
Wow.
So this is a race between the discovery of a vulnerability and the exploit from the hacker and the patch to fix the vulnerability. And on the other hand, the identification of the existence of such a vulnerability in a company. So this is where prevention comes into play. If you know that you have a door open and that you cannot close this door, so typically 0 day, you have uncovered a vulnerability in your system, and you know that you cannot patch this vulnerability now. So what you're going to do is to contain this area in order that even if you're getting attacked in there, the attack is not going to spread in the rest of the organization. So by doing some cyber risk quantification and risk prevention, you are not going to avoid being attacked. You will still being attacked because the attackers, they're still there and they're still motivated by getting some money from you, and they will try. But what you can do is to contain the impact. And by proper prevention, if you have identified a vulnerability, and then you contain it. So you circle the perimeter around it, and you say, all right, the attacker is going to come in there, but I've isolated all this. And the concept, the literal concept of firewall here, you build your wall around this area. And only by doing some preventive scanning can you uncover that. Now, for people who are doing software such like ours, it has to be in the cloud, because every day we get information, live feeds of all these new vulnerabilities which are detected. So we know which are the 0 days, we know what is at risk, and that will help us tell our customers, be careful, door open here. You can't close the door. We don't close the door for them. We don't provide a tool to close the door, because if the door is a Microsoft door, only Microsoft can fix it. But we will tell, please contain immediately. Quarantine this area immediately. This is what we can do. Again, technically speaking, this is only 20% of the intrusions, of the attacks. 80% of the intrusions, they're on people. They're on social engineering. And we can do the same thing for that. We can say, we can test people. We can launch some phishing simulation campaigns to them. And then we can see that, if you have 20% of people clicking on a phishing email, then you're really in trouble. And this is the average for people, for companies which have a low cybersecurity awareness among their staff. 20% of them click on phishing emails. You all know what phishing emails are, huh? I assume. A company with a high level of cybersecurity awareness, 3% of people still click. This is what it takes. Only actually 1%.
They should not click.
Are you challenging me here, Sedomir? I'm going to launch a phishing campaign on ESSEC, and we'll see how many people are clicking. We'll sign an NDA first. Now, I'm not going to do this illegally. Yes, including the students.
Thank you. Sorry.
Hello, thank you very much. I just like to, not a question, is more a remark. I think there is a kind of a paradox on your conversation this morning, because on one hand, you said we are transferring to the insurance market only residual risks. On the other hand, you said, or you are saying that insurers are losing money. It's not really a profitable branch for the insurance market at that time.
At that time.
And at that time, so there is a real question in terms of mutualization worldwide. And the other point is, more particularly when I'm hearing what you're saying, Frederic, there is a kind of systematic risk. So you are more or less, we are more or less as a company 100% to be attacked in one year in the coming decade, let's say. Mm-hmm. So do you think that it's a real insurable risk? And do you think that in the future the risk area will be happy with this line of business? I'm from Aon, so I know what's happening on the insurance market.
You know what you're talking about.
In terms of insurance markets, it was a new product, so it's been 10, 15 years ago now, and the evolution of the market and the price evolved, and the evolution of the number of attacks evolved and increased significantly. So when I mentioned, it's profitable, it was profitable for insurance company before COVID-19, yes. Because most of the private company wanted to purchase insurance policy, and whatever the price, whatever the competitor, whatever the type of cyber coverage. The insurance is based on premium versus loss, and you have a ratio for that. So you pay a premium, it's 100, and we are betting that for normal pricing. So we are rating that, so based on your level of prevention, based on your level of protection. So we are consider that we can cover your organization, and for example, the premium will be 100. Okay, and the insurer will assume that with 100 of premium, with a certain level of coverage guarantee, I'm able to cover different type of claim, different type of risk you will face, and I assuming that this loss will represent around 60%, 65% of loss. So you pay 100 premium, and I will indemnify 65%. We are getting like this, and this is the ratio that the perception of the insurer for. But if you look at the last 2-3 years, the number of claims and the number of attacks increased significantly. So when you look at the insurance market, we're just to imagine that the market represents 100 now, and what is the reality now in terms of loss? The value of loss now represents 120, 130. So that's why the cyber insurance is getting more and more expensive, because it's insurance company, you remain a corporate company, make some business, you know, earn some money. So which insurance company will be keen to, okay, I put 100 on the table, give me 100 on the table, and I will give you a check for indemnification. It's 120, 130. No one's company will do that. So the perception of the risk 3 years ago was 100 in terms of pricing. Now, for the same type of risk, same level of protection, this premium is from 100 now to 150 to 180. This is the evolution of the insurance. The same things in healthcare, you know, you have a price, but we have specialists in this table. It's based on the number of time you claim. So if you're talking about maternity, if you're talking about different type of coverage you claim, so it's versus the level of premium you paid versus the number of time you claim and the value of claim.
Yeah, there is definitely some bright future for insurances to market some cyber insurances if they start to do some proper cyber risk quantification. And I had this discussion with a large reinsurer in Germany, one of the largest in the world, where we were comparing our way to evaluate the cyber risk. And they said, you know, what you're doing with the software is incredibly sophisticated, because what we are doing is just declarative. And we're asking 40 questions to our applicants or customers when they want to sign a contract. And, you know, apart from the fact that 40 questions is a very rudimentary way of assessing a risk, this is valid only today. And remember that we said that every day 50 to 60 new vulnerabilities are uncovered, and spammers and scammers are inventing some new ways of phishing and social engineering every day. And if you're not continuously scanning all this and providing some scientific data to the insurer and proper quantification as it is done for natural disasters and other risks, then you stay with a cyber risk quantification which is rudimentary and sometimes even dangerous. By asking 40 questions and only the sector of activity and the revenues of the company, this and basing a price on this, a premium price on this, it is super rudimentary. And yet this was still what insurances were doing in 2021, and this is why they lost a lot of money. This is why they started to multiply the premiums by 2 or 3. This is why they started to put some exclusion clauses on ransomwares for 2022. Now, there is a way out of that, and that was the discussion I had with this German reinsurer, and they said, by doing proper cyber risk quantification, we could divide the premiums by 2. I could take on board 10 times more customers because I reject 90% of the applications which are submitted to me, and I would reduce the premium of my reinsurer. He was actually in the cyber insurance branch of this reinsurer, who was his reinsurer, and starting to freak out because the exposure level they were taking was far too high. So, and what he said is, we should impose cyber risk quantification softwares, such as yours, but any kind, to our customers. We could take them on board, that will reduce the premium. We could, you know, take on board this residual risk, because nowadays we're blind. We believe we're doing correctly because we've got people who are analyzing response to question, but this is its old way of doing things. It has to be based on data. It has to be iterative, and it has to be scientific. And this is the way for a very successful cyber insurance market.
Thank you, Frederic. We are gradually, unfortunately, coming to the end of this discussion. It was extremely interesting to listen to you because we have several dimensions of it. The first one is on the state level, and the war in Ukraine is showing it. I just look at how Starlink from Elon Musk is deploying there in order to have a conversation. So the question is it protected or not? So that's on this level. I just received also yesterday a mail telling me that a guy is hacking my account and having all my pictures and everything. I said, oh, yeah, what is that? And, we receive all the time this kind of situation. So it means that we are all exposed to this on an individual level, on the state level, on the business level. And I was happy to have two persons here presenting the two facets of it, but complementary. So on one side, we have the technical side. On the other side, we have the insurance side, and they work together. And as Frederick has said, it is not excluding, it is complementary one to the other. So I hope that you had some answers. You don't have all the answers. For that, you have to come to see them separately in order to have all the answers. And I would like to thank them very much for the participation, and the organizers, the French Chamber and the SEC, for organizing this beautiful meeting, first time in presence, and hopefully we have many more in the future. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a question